afternoon. Joining us now to talk about all of this is Democratic Congressman Ted Deutch. He represents this district where this happened. Congressman, thank you for being here. I'm so sorry for your people in this district.
Thanks, Allison.
I don't know how to ask the question any differently. I don't know how many times I have to ask the question about why we can't stop this. Do you have any wisdom on this?
Well, it's not wisdom that we need, it's action that we need. I appreciate the interview that you just did with the two students, and I, as they were leaving, I just went to tell them how brave I thought they were, and he looked at me and he said, we want action. And that's coming from someone who had to endure just unspeakable horror yesterday. And what happened here in an incredible community full of wonderful people. The kids at the school, I was at this school just a few weeks ago. These are some of the best kids you'll find anywhere.
And this is considered, it was voted the safest town in Florida.
Right, and so what all that shows us is that no one is immune from this kind of slaughter. And look, I have to tell you, for all of the people who have been saying you can't politicize this, for the people who have gone to attack anyone who said anything about the need to do something, the only people who are politicizing what happened here, the loss of life, the tragedy, one of the worst days that anyone here will ever experience, are the people who don't want to take action, are the people who are looking for any reason to give Congress one more chance to be silent. And you shouldn't have to feel the way I do. You shouldn't have to stand with a group of cameras in front of a high school where kids were slaughtered to want to do something.
And those kids want us to do it today. They want us to talk about it today. The people who endured it and lived through it want it to happen today. So what's the problem with Congress?
You know what they don't want? I'll tell you what those kids don't want. They don't want to turn on C-SPAN and watch a moment of silence in the House and then utter silence going forward. My colleagues came up to me yesterday to offer support and condolences. There were Democrats, there were Republicans, they came from every part of the country, and I believe them. They were sincere, and I appreciate it. But the nice words aren't enough. We have to look for ways to try to prevent future tragedies like this from taking place. Yes, this is a school shooting, and it's a slaughter. It's one of the worst mass shootings in our country's history. We can't be numb to it. We can't accept this as just part of the price of living in America. That's not who we are. We owe it to the kids that you just had on, the families of those whose lives were lost here. We've got to look for ways, every way. Everything has to be on the table. Some people say it's just mental health. Let's talk about mental health. Some people rightly point out that there's no reason to have high-capacity magazines. Let's have that debate. Let's talk about AR-15s. Let's talk about the Second Amendment, and there are a million discussions that we have to have.
And are you having those discussions in the halls of Congress?
We're not having those discussions.
Why not?
Allison, the only way that we were able to have a discussion about guns and gun safety on the House floor was by sitting in on the House floor for 26 hours straight. That's not the way that
you staged a sit-in, meaning?
We had a sit-in. Look, I've raised this with the Speaker directly. I raised it with the Speaker after Pulse, after the worst mass shooting.
Yes, we were here for that. Chris and I were reporting on that, too. And, I mean, with each one of these things, you just think that you'll never see something as devastating. And then somehow they up the ante. And so what was the Speaker's response when you raised all of these things?
Well, look, the Speaker's response was, we're not going to talk about that now. I told the Speaker at the time the discussion was about the piece of legislation, the reasonable legislation that said if you're too dangerous to board a plane, if you're on the no-fly list, then you shouldn't be able to buy a gun. Not controversy at all. I told the Speaker, if you've got concerns about the civil rights concerns, if you've got concerns about due process, which I think was his argument, then let's sit down and talk about it. But clearly we ought to be able to find some way to take meaningful steps. Allison, after Las Vegas, there was a moment where everyone at least said, well, even the NRA said, well, maybe we should outlaw these bump stocks that allow you to take
There was unanimity. Why would you ever be able to turn a semi-automatic into an automatic? Then what happened in Congress?
Even the NRA said maybe we should do that.
I remember.
And then they quickly pivoted and said, well, we're going to let the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms go forward with this. No. When as many people die on a regular basis, when you have school shooting after school shooting, when you have this scene repeated everywhere in the country all the time, we can't allow anyone else to try to take care of this. We have to try to do it. I've received messages, not just from all around the country, but I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee, from people I know around the world. They can't believe it. And we've got to try to find some way to do this. It's not political. Those kids who were killed weren't killed because of what they believe, what their party is, how they voted in the last election. They're students who showed up at school and never got home.
And so how do you explain it? Why does the NRA is it that the NRA has a stranglehold on lawmakers? I mean, I was looking at the donations that the NRA gives to various lawmakers. They're like 4,000 here, 7,000 there. That's worth it?
Right. I don't know why. Look, I don't want to have a conversation about why people don't act. I want to have a conversation about what we have to do to cause people to act. That's going forward. That's
and what's
what we
the
have
answer?
to do.
What does have to happen to get people to act?
Well, look, the governors, our governors down here with the Attorney General, the President of the United States is going to be about an hour from here over the weekend. Right? I would think that instead of tweeting, as the president did yesterday, that some are trying to inject politics in this, I would think that there's an opportunity for someone like the president to actually be a leader and say, we can't have this happen, and remember the kinds of things that he had said when he was a candidate in his prior life. Look, this is not, it's not political. And I know there are people watching who are just, they're so anxious for me to bash one side, to make this a political fight. Look, the politics are hard. They're really hard. But no member of Congress should have to come down here, get out of their car, and greet a grieving mayor who shared with me the stories of the people that she knows, whose kids were there, who didn't come home. Like, no one should have to feel that in order to want to take action. I know that this is hard. I know that we've got discussions about stranglehold in the politics and outside interest groups. I don't care about them. I care about stopping things like this from happening so that families don't have to grieve, so that we don't have to go through this time and time and time again.
We hear you, Congressman Ted Deutch. We hope that your colleagues in Congress hear you as well. We hope that you can make some progress, even in beginning the conversation. Thanks so much for being here.
I appreciate it.